So welcome to the third video where I'm going to talk to you about how to do artist research. Now, as soon as I say research, I think it kind of reminds you of lots of writing, lots of kind of boring work. Well, you can make it interesting and you can make it fun. You can. You just got to know where to look and what to really do. So I'm starting off, as always, by looking at my mind map. And this was the last thing that I did at the end of the second video where I talked about mood boards. And hopefully that mood board will have gotten you will have got you into an area of that you can focus on within your project. So I'm focusing on control, and I've highlighted some of these key words on here. These are going to be really important when it comes to doing my artist research, but I'll get to that bit later. One of the first things that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to find some images. And what I thought I'd do is I'd show you kind of how to do that. You might already know how to use Google, but there might, sorry, not images, find some information. So I'm going to show you how to find some information. Now you'll know how to use Google, but I think one of the most important things is you kind of know where to look for the information and what to do if you can't find the right information that you want. So one of my artists from my mood board here is Karen Stanley. So I'm going to look at this artist on the right here, Karen Stanley. So let's try typing in and seeing what happens. Well, I know, I've already tested. I know Karen Stanley is up on here. I wanted to make sure I had something. So we've got a number of interesting things here. One of the top hits I've got for this artist is Saatchi Art. This is a good sign. So it means that he is a practicing photographer, and this is something that he does for a living. You know, he's not just someone who has taken a few photographs. When you might find that, okay, yes, you found a photographer, but they don't really do anything special. They haven't created artwork, really. So if you're not sure, you can always contact me and I can kind of give you some help and some advice and some other suggestions for photographers if you're not too sure. So here we go. So I've got some nice information here. I've got about Karen Stanley. I'm a self-taught visual artist living in South Africa using surreal photography to craft alternative worlds rooted in reality, in which to explore the beauty and pain of human existence. And you can read more there. And there's a little bit about exhibitions. So this section of this artist research video is going to be broken into 4 parts. And I'm going to explain what those parts mean. I'll come back to Karen in a minute. But I have sent out some questions to help you with the research. And this is the sort of, I'm going to start with an easy set of questions. And I'm going to show you an example. So artist or photographer research, whatever you're doing, it works the same way. So first of all, information. What information can you gather about that artist, that photographer? So I've got the example of Slinkertube, and just to sort of give you a visual, we'll come back to Karen in a minute, but to give you a visual, this is Slinkertube. So he produces these little models which he makes himself. He gets them from miniature train sets, and he arranges them in a way that's usually quite funny. So we've got some little models here climbing up the side of this grating, which is kind of cool, this fence. And here's another example here. And he mixes the small with the large. So we'll have a large object with these small little figures, and it's for fun. But I mean, there's also another little kind of cute message here, you know, 2 people in love, can't reach each other, they're stuck. Maybe the chewing gum is a symbol for something else in their life. Who knows? There's a few more examples. That's a bigger model there. That's quite a nice example there. So you get the idea. This is somebody who makes these little models, places them down, and then photographs them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the research that I've done and on this photographer, and hopefully that will kind of give you an idea of the sorts of things that you're looking for. So information. When did they start to create their work? Can you find that out? Well, I found this out for Slinkerchew. Born in Devon, has been abandoning miniature people on the streets of cities around the world since 2006, and I took that directly from the website. He was born in 1979. He's been leaving his miniature people on the streets of cities around the world since 2006. Influences. So what's made them create their work? What inspired them to make their work? Well, Slinkerchew's work is not directly influenced by any other artist or photographer. This is something he said on his website. Instead, he was influenced by toys he played with at a young age, as his work is very playful and childlike. I've always been interested in small things, so put quotes in to help you. You can put them straight in if you find a quote. My dad made me a train set when I was younger, but I was never really interested in the trains. It was always the figures and the houses and the trees that fascinated me. And then his real name. His work uses great imagination, a lot of patience to make the models. Style. What does their work look like? Is there a hidden meaning? Slinkerchew has a distinct style that you can recognise throughout all of his work. When you first look at his work, it might make you laugh because it can look quite ridiculous with a small person interacting with large objects. When you stop and think about his work, you realise there's another meaning to it. A little person in a big world makes them seem fragile, weak and vulnerable. It also means a small object for someone our size becomes a plaything or incredibly valuable. I really like this little sentence that I wrote. I really like this sentence that I wrote. I am amazing. I really like it because if you think of things that you don't do anymore as an adult, or things that you stop doing when you grow up and you sort of rediscover when you get a bit older, toys is a really good one. Something that I found I did when I was going through my late teens and early 20s is I got rid of a lot of toys because I was sort of getting rid of that side of me that was no longer important. I kind of got rid of all my toys, a lot of Star Wars figures, and I suddenly realised later in life I sort of missed it. I didn't want the big collection anymore. I didn't want to play with them in the same way, make the ships zoom around and all that kind of thing. I just liked having that thing there that represented a part of my life. And sort of I ended up rebuying some of these toys. So I can really relate to this, playing with things. Imagine being in that sort of world as well. Being in a world where everything is sort of 10 times bigger than it should be. I remember reading about a soft play area for adults, which sounds like a lot of fun. That would be amazing. Imagine, that's one of the best things about being a kid, going to those soft play areas. Everything's big slides, giant ball pit to jump into. So I really like this thing. And it kind of gives ideas for doing things with photography, especially with digital manipulation, making yourself seem really small in a giant world. Techniques. What methods of photography and art do they use? Slinkerchew uses his camera low to the ground so that you see the world from a small person's perspective, sometimes zooming out to see the scale of the figure from a distance. He will often use a large aperture so there's a narrow depth of field. So let's just go back here. So you can see this one's close up, this one's further out, that one's nice and far out. I'm zooming in too fast, it's going too quick. So this one's close up. Depth of field basically means how much of the picture is in focus. So can you see the foreground here is out of focus? You try and ignore these little logos. But you can see right up close around here is out of focus. And the tin can in the background is also out of focus. The only part that's in focus are these figures and the rocks in between. This is called a narrow depth of field. It's a very thin area where the depth of the picture is very small. There's a small depth of the picture that's in focus, if that makes sense. A wide depth of field means everything is in focus, or more of the picture is going to be in focus. Let's see if I can find another example. So this is a wide depth of field because everything is in focus and it's zoomed out, so you can sort of get a sense of scale. You can see how things are small. Whereas this one is close up and you can probably just about make out here, I don't know if you can see, all along the bottom part here is slightly out of focus, and everything from here upwards is all out of focus. So this is another narrow depth of field. You tend to get narrow depth of field with anything that you photograph close up, You'll probably notice it if you've ever photographed flowers and things like that, that in the background is the background of the flowers is out of focus. Okay, so this example here has a slightly wider depth of field, but can you spot which part of the photograph is out of focus? There is a part that's out of focus. So here, this flower is out of focus. All of this is in focus, and also the background is out of focus. So although this is a wider depth of field, it's not completely all in focus. We're going to get to how you do that later. What we're going to do after this video is I'm going to start to get you into actually taking some photographs based on all the research you've got, because you should have by the end of this video you should have some really good ideas for photography, hopefully, and you can then go out with purpose to actually take some photographs with meaning. Okay, so let's come back to my research here. So he uses camera low to the ground so you see the world from the small person's perspective, sometimes zooming out to see the scale of the figure from a distance. You'll often use a large aperture so there's a narrow depth of field. So that's a bit of technical information there. Your theme, your reason for choosing. Why did you choose? This is really, really important. Oh, what did I do? It's really, really important because I want to know what you think about the photography. What do you think about it? What do you think it means? What do you think it represents? And how can you use it to inspire your own work? This should be the exciting bit. So I chose Slinkertube because I want to create photographs that are low to the ground and expose a smaller world in nature. Okay, that's enough of the Slinkertube. I want to give you an example of one that's finished. Let's kind of go back to Karen Stanley and see what I can find out. So the first question that I've got here is, when did they start to create their work? Where has it gone? Here. So let's read a little bit more here. There's loads here. There's loads of information. So let's try and find, let's skim read here. From the age of 12, okay, from age 12, I knew I wanted to somehow be involved in film. And age 21, I walked into the London Film Academy to begin my adventure into film. So that would be something. So I'd literally just copy that. Come over here. Oop, not that one. And then I'd paste it in here. But I then, let's delete this. I then start to put it into my own words. So instead of from age 12, I knew, I can change it to from age 12, and then maybe to make it more my own, 12 years old. And then put his name in there. Karen knew that he wanted to, instead of using the word involved, let's show you another little trick. I'm going to copy that, come over to Google, type in synonyms. There's a lovely website here called thesaurus.com, and you can put in your word and look up a synonym. A synonym is basically another word for that word. Involved. Okay, so this is a different meaning of the word involved. This means if it's really involved, it's complicated. So let's look up a different one. Really involved. Absorbed. Brilliant. That's a good word. It's really absorbed. I've gone to the wrong one again. He wanted to be absorbed in film. I'm going to put a full stop there. At age 21, he, instead of walked into, let's put went to the London Film Academy to begin my adventure into film, to begin his career in film and photography. So I'm going to just look through these questions, and I'm going to do a bit of research, and then I'm going to come back to you and show you what I've written and how I've changed what I've written. I'm going to highlight the things that I've done. The other thing that I'm really wanting to make sure I try and cover are any of these keywords. I want to make sure some of these keywords are mentioned. So I'm going to list those, and then I'm hopefully going to try and cover them. So if I put them at the top here, so I've got forced. Let's put these in capitals. Forced. I've got shoving. I've got control, obviously, is one of mine. And hunched. And pulling. And lifting. Performing. Oop. Performing. Come on, Graham. Spell it. Spell it. Watching. Staring. Embarrassing. Display. And exhibit. So those are my keywords. I want to try and cover these somehow when I come to writing my research. But I'm going to go away, I'm going to zoom through it, and I'm going to come back to you and show you what I've done. Why do I have to sing? Okay, so I've finished writing my little section here, and these were the keywords that I wanted to try and include. I've realised that after writing the research that it's easier to try and put these keywords in your own description of one of the artist's pieces of work. I'll explain what I mean in a bit, but first of all, I'm just going to show you what I've done. So I've put some examples of their work first of all here, and tried to find the names of them. If you can't find the names, you can always just put untitled, and you don't have the exact name on there. We've got Dreamer and Silence Comes Suddenly, and the one that I found here, which is called The Puppeteer, and I've written a little bit about it on here. So this is just all from looking at the image myself and writing how I feel about it. How does it relate to my project? So first of all, I started by describing what I see. So this is visual information. In this photograph, there is a hand that is forcing someone, almost shoving them away from the camera. The giant hand looks in control, and the figure is hunched but not pulling away, as if they had given up trying to fight against the hand. The photograph is called The Puppeteer, which I think is called that because we are watching an embarrassing display, almost as if the hands are lifting the person away to be an exhibit for something else. The photograph uses, that should say, this is why you should always check what you wrote, uses a simple form of framing with the subject in the centre and the space around as an eerie, grainy texture, with most of the colour desaturated from it. Now, to help you with this written work, I have got some questions to help you answer. So if you're finding it hard to do that kind of thing, you've got all of this. You should have these questions. I can send them to you if you don't have them. Like, what colours do you see? What adjective describes these colours? Tones, light areas, shadows. And then there's some describing words, some adjectives to help you choose one of those. So grainy was one of the ones that I chose to describe the picture here. So there are loads of other questions. I'm not going to go through them all here, but they talk about shape, form, pattern and space and lighting and that kind of thing. But this is all visual information. You know, what do you actually see in the photograph itself? So then we go a little bit further. So this is what I ended up writing. So from age 12 years old, he knew he wanted to somehow be absorbed in film. At 21, he went to London Film Academy to begin his career in film and photography. From I've repeated myself there. Let's delete that. He lives in South Africa and is an artist who taught himself using surreal photography. He creates different worlds based on reality which explore human life and the beauty. I'm not going to read all of this, but I've basically taken a lot of what was said in the original text and reworded it and written it. If I understand it, that's fine. I can rewrite it and put it in my own words. I will read you a little bit. Some parts of it were so well written and sounded so good. I've put them in quotes. So he has said, in a single frame, you can transport someone to an entirely new reality, a different level of consciousness. And he also said here, the transient nature of identity, addiction, and the pain of existence as part of the whole beautiful truth of life. That's him talking about his photography and depression. And I've written what I think that means. The best thing about writing what you think something means is you can't possibly be wrong, because it's what you think. It's your interpretation of what somebody has said. And that's one of the best things and exciting things, I think, about writing your artist research. You can't go wrong when you put your own opinion in, because it's your own opinion. Unless you say something completely ridiculous like, I think it looks like Homer Simpson or something, some kind of ridiculous claim, If it's in your own opinion and you can relate it to something in complete and utter honesty, then you can't go wrong. At the end here, they've also mentioned that they were inspired by music, film, and other artists Brooke Shaden, Lara Zankel, and Laura Macabrescu. Now, I've put some examples of their work. I've tried to pick examples that are similar to this photograph here, this control photograph. So I've picked forms that sort of stood in the same way, and none of them have faces either. There's a fly buzzing around. None of them have faces either, and I've written a little bit about why I've chosen them. I've chosen the 3 other images from the artist that Karen mentioned. All 3 are faceless and capture an emotion of sorts. Brooke Shaden uses a spotlight to focus the attention to the centre of the photograph here. So it's just what I see. I don't need to know anything about photography. It's just exactly what I'm seeing. It's like a spot of sunlight. Hunched centre of the photograph, and the saturation turned down. Saturation is how much colour is in there, how intense, how bright are the colours. There are some bright colours here, but there's not a lot of shade. It's either dark or light, so you want lots and lots of different shades of colour. There's a difference between a photograph like this and a really bright and cheerful photograph. If I just put photograph in here, let's see if I can come up with a decent. Okay, so for example, this one here, there's lots of colour. It's really bright. And there's lots of different shades of colour as well. The saturation has almost been turned up because the colours are quite intense. Okay, so let's go back here. And I've put Laura Macabrescu's image has no colour at all. The butterflies in the stomach become a metaphor rather than a literal meaning. And symbolism in photography is a really good thing to write about. What do you think these things symbolise? What do butterflies symbolise? The first thing I thought of is the phrase, the saying, I've got butterflies in my stomach, which means I feel nervous. I feel very nervous about something bad is going to happen. Doesn't mean they've actually got butterflies in their stomach, but they'd imagine if one did live in their stomach, it's kind of what it might feel like, fluttering around and making you feel a bit sick. Sorry to start talking about this, but hey, this is what I've decided to look at. So the sense of control could be that when these feelings happen, they take over and control your actions. So when you get butterflies in your stomach, you get nervous and you maybe don't do the thing that you really wanted to do because you're too scared. You have this horrible feeling inside your stomach. So these are wonderful photographs. I'm going to use these as inspiration for my next photo shoot, and that's going to be the next. That's going to be my next video. So until then, I will see you then, and I'm going to talk about how you can compose and arrange and create some interesting photography, and how you can practice doing some photography using different perspectives and the ideas that you've already got. Any questions, email me. You know my email if I teach you, and I look forward to seeing what you've done. Until then, I don't, why? I just say bye bye. I don't know why I have to. Ugh, bye.